You know, since we got 2 more films after this series wasn't ready yet to say farewell. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and another installment in my Candyman review series, where I go through all the Candyman movies in the lead up to my review of the new film. Today we're talking about the second movie, Candyman Farewell to the Flesh. So before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my channel out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's jump right into it and let's talk about Candyman Farewell to the Flesh. This sees Tony Todd reprise his role as the Candyman, who arrives in New Orleans and sets his sights on a young woman named Annie, played by Kelly Rowan, whose family was ruined by the immortal killer years before. This is directed by Bill Condon, making this only his second feature film, replacing the original film's director Bernard Rose, who initially was supposed to return for this, and outside of Tony Todd, as well as one other character, Philip Purcell, who was the professor of Helen from the first movie, and is shown in the opening sequence here, we're otherwise focused on an entirely new set of characters, as is typically the case in most of these slasher sequels. And yes, it's worth noting this time around that unlike the first film, which mixed gothic horror, supernatural horror, and slasher elements to create a more unique experience, this is essentially just a straight-up slasher movie, steering the series away from the more notable social commentary that was present in that first movie. And it unfortunately results in a very generic, by-the-numbers slasher movie that doesn't even come close to being on the same level as the original. It's actually a shame that Bernard Rose didn't return for this one. I don't know the official reason why he left this film, but I do know his ideas were getting rejected, which probably could have played a part in it. I'm honestly not sure there, I'm just speculating. If you know the reason for sure, let me know in the comments. Though either way, he did have some ideas floating around, including a prequel movie, as well as a Jack the Ripper style movie taking place in London, where he would have incorporated elements of Clive Barker's Books of Blood, allowing it to keep the same tone of the first. And even if these ideas wouldn't have totally worked, at least Rose got what made Candyman work so well, and even though he made changes to Barker's original source material for the first movie, he still had a vision, and it's what made it work so well. Here though, this is as generic as they come. I don't quite hate it, which I know some people do. I think it's actually a little better than other cheap horror sequels, but it's also not that good either. And I don't blame the fact that Bill Condon was behind this one either, as he's a very talented director in his own right, and I'm sure he was just a director for hire for this one. Plus, as I said, this was only his second film. But I actually don't have a ton to say about this movie, though before I get into my negatives, I do want to first discuss the one thing I did like about this movie, and that's the return of Tony Todd as the Candyman. I wouldn't say he doesn't really get anything to do that's different than he did in the first movie, other than some flashback scenes where we actually see him in the 1800s before actually becoming the Candyman. But at the very least, whenever he shows up, it's great. While he does mostly repeat a lot of the same lines he had in the first movie, what makes up for it is that, as usual, his voice is booming and it complements his very strong physical presence. And while it's honestly disappointing that this remains nothing but a generic slasher movie, what I can say is, when he is wreaking havoc, it is at least cool. It's filled with a lot of creative, bloody violence that at least feels somewhat in the vein of the first movie. It feels exciting, and it does seem like Todd himself did have some fun with the role while delivering all these cryptic lines in his usual sneering manner, while still keeping things grounded and not becoming a borderline cartoon character like what happens with some other slasher villains. But beyond that, there's really not much to say here. I'm actually kind of frustrated I don't have more to say about this, because basically all this does is just take the formula of the first movie and rework it with some new characters. You have Annie, who's interested in debunking the Candyman myth. She invokes his name, thinking it'll disprove the myth, and then Candyman shows up and goes on a killing spree. The end. Oh, and Annie is revealed to be a direct descendant of the Candyman, who went by Daniel Robitaille when alive. And whenever Candyman appears and taunts Annie, he tells her how it's always been about her and how important she is, and so on and so on. Basically, a lot of the same things he said to Virginia Madsen in the first movie. but now all of a sudden Annie is the most important one. And once again, the Candyman's murder spree does cause someone else to get framed for his work. In this case, it's Annie's brother Ethan, played by William O'Leary, who's accused of killing Purcell in the opening scene because the two have a big confrontation over the subject of the Candyman right before he dies. Different characters, but a similar situation as the first movie. So other than just switching up some of the scenarios, this doesn't quite offer anything new or fresh that the first film didn't already offer. Now, does it mean it's absolutely terrible? Well, surprisingly, no, not at all, as at least it's entertaining whenever the Candyman shows up. But the Candyman isn't always on screen for the entirety of this 95-minute runtime, and what we get whenever we're not focused on the Candyman just isn't as intriguing. Annie's not as interesting of a protagonist, we're subjected to cheap jump scares in place of the moody atmosphere set by the first movie, and worst of all, many of the biggest moments feel like they're just following the original film's structure beat by beat. Now, if that's all you're looking for, just seeing the Candyman let loose in different scenarios and nothing else, then maybe you won't mind this one so much. But for me, I was hoping for more. Candyman Farewell to the Flesh is far from one of the worst horror sequels out there, but it's as generic as they come. It's essentially the first movie, just moved to a different scenario, and that's about it. It offers nothing new or unique in terms of plot elements or story structure, and it's nowhere near as chilling as the first movie, also lacking in any of that film's meaningful social commentary. While it's cool to see Tony Todd return, and he does make his scenes as fun as he can, it's unfortunately not enough to make this a consistently entertaining time. Candyman Farewell to the Flesh gets a 5 out of 10. So stay tuned. Up next will be my review of the third film, Candyman Day of the Dead. But in the meantime, let me know, did you see Candyman 2, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you think this was as bad as everyone says it was? Did you like it at all? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.